There's four of us. 2 days, nothing to eat.
Here's
One
some water
sandwich,
for you
please.
guys.
No money, no food.
Thank you, son.
He's diabetic. He's
Appreciate
shaking
it.
right now. Not my problem. You'd let a man drop on your floor? Call 911. Four bikers stranded at a gas station off Route 9, a charity ride for homeless kids, and they couldn't even feed themselves. Duke Calloway, 3 tours in Afghanistan, built a foundation from nothing, couldn't buy a glass of water. Liam Foster sat outside gripping his school lunch. 19. Black. The only black kid on this side of town. The only meal his mother woke at 5 to make. He walked inside and split it 4 ways. "Here," the kid said. "Take mine." But Liam didn't know what that lunchbox was about to start. Cedar Hollow wasn't the kind of town that made the news. Population 4,000 and shrinking. 1 traffic light, a Family Dollar, a post office, and a diner called Rosie's that still had a payphone bolted to the wall by the restroom. The Foster house sat at the dead end of Maple Street, a 2-bedroom bungalow with white paint that had gone gray in patches and a porch rail that leaned like it was tired of standing. The mailbox at the curb read Foster in stick-on letters, but the second F had peeled off 2 winters ago and nobody had replaced it. Inside, the kitchen smelled like coffee and dish soap. Ellen Foster moved through it the way she moved through everything, quickly, quietly, with the efficiency of someone who had learned not to waste a single minute. She was 44, but looked older. Night shifts at St. Francis Hospital had carved lines around her eyes that no amount of sleep could fix, mostly because sleep was something she rarely got. At the kitchen counter, she packed a lunchbox. Rice from last night, a piece of chicken thigh she'd trimmed from her own dinner plate, boiled greens, 1 apple D, the last one in the bag, slightly bruised on the left side, but she turned it bruised down so it looked better. She sealed the lid and set it by the door. This was the routine every morning, 5 a.m. before Liam's alarm went off at 5:10. Liam Foster was 19, black, the only black family on Maple Street, and one of a handful in Cedar Hollow. Freshman at Cedar County Community College, studying mechanical engineering because his father had been good with his hands, and Liam figured the talent had to go somewhere. He was lean, not athletic lean, but the kind that comes from skipping meals and not talking about it. The kind of kid you wouldn't notice in a crowded room unless you were paying attention. And most people in Cedar Hollow had stopped paying attention to the Fosters a long time ago. His father, Greg Foster, had been a construction worker, framing crew. Good at it, too. The foreman used to say Greg could hang a door plumb in the dark. 3 years ago, a scaffold brace snapped on a commercial site. Greg fell 22 feet onto a concrete slab. He died before the ambulance arrived. There was a settlement, $14,000. It sounded like a lot until the funeral cost $6,000, and the rest went to back rent and a water heater that had quit the same month, as if the house itself knew something had broken. After that, Ellen picked up nights at St. Francis. 12-hour shifts, 3 to 4 times a week, on her feet from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., checking vitals, changing dressings, cleaning up after patients who sometimes swore at her and sometimes held her hand and cried. Liam got a job at Quick Mart, the convenience store half a mile from the gas station, stocking shelves and running the register for $9.25 an hour. After closing, he'd sweep the parking lot for an extra 15 minutes off the clock because his manager once hinted that employees who went the extra mile got kept on the schedule. On Saturdays, he knocked on doors offering to mow lawns for $10 a yard. He kept a folded envelope in his dresser with cash skimmed from his own tips. 10s and 5s he slipped into his mother's purse when she wasn't looking. Ellen never mentioned the money. Liam never mentioned the foreclosure notice she'd hidden under the phone book. $12,400, 3 months overdue, stamped final warning in red. They were careful with each other that way. Gentle. Like 2 people carrying the same heavy thing through a narrow door, each pretending the weight wasn't killing them. Every morning, Liam picked up the lunchbox by the door. Every morning he said, "Thanks, Mom." Every morning Ellen smiled and said, "There's plenty." There wasn't. The thing about being poor and black in a small white town is that everyone knows, and nobody says it to your face. They say it behind you, in the cereal aisle, in the church parking lot, in the low voices that stop when you walk into Rosie's. Liam heard it once through a neighbor's open window. "Ellen's behind 3 months on the house." 3 months? Lord, the boy works every night at that gas station store. Somebody ought to do something. Nobody did. At school, Liam sat in the back row, not because he was a bad student, but because the back row was where you sat when your jeans had a patch and your backpack zipper had been broken since September. He borrowed his textbooks from the public library, where a librarian kept a shelf of donated college texts, 2 editions old. His laptop was a scratched Chromebook from the college's loaner program, due back every Friday. He did his homework at the campus library because the house had no internet. Ellen had canceled it 8 months earlier, one of the first things to go. The hardest part wasn't the hunger. Liam had learned the tricks. Drink water before class, chew gum during the afternoon slump, eat the lunchbox slowly so it felt like more than it was. The hardest part was the pretending. Pretending he wasn't tired after closing Quickmart at 11 and walking 40 minutes home in the dark. Pretending he didn't see the foreclosure notice. Pretending he didn't hear the whispers. Pretending his shoes weren't held together with superglue where the sole had split. Pretending, most of all, that he wasn't angry, because he was. Not at his mother, never at Ellen. He was angry at the scaffold brace that snapped. Angry at the contractor fined only $11,000 for the safety violation that killed his father, like Greg Foster's life was worth less than a used truck. Angry at the lawyer who took 30% of the settlement. Angry at the water heater, the dryer, the roof, the whole crumbling architecture of a life that kept demanding money they didn't have. But Liam didn't talk about anger. He talked about engineering. If you can understand how something breaks, he told a lab partner once, you can figure out how to keep it standing. His lab partner thought he meant bridge loads. He didn't. The one thing Liam never skipped was the lunchbox. Every morning he carried it to school like it was something fragile, because it was. Not the food, which was simple and cheap, but the act of it. His exhausted mother, standing in that kitchen at 5 a.m., packing rice and chicken for a son she wouldn't see again until tomorrow because their shifts ran opposite, like 2 trains on the same track that never crossed. That lunchbox was the only conversation they had most days. It said, "I'm still here. I still care." And every morning, Liam carried that conversation to school and ate it alone on a bench outside the engineering building, where nobody could see how slowly he chewed. It was a Friday afternoon in late September, the heat still heavy. Liam pedaled his $15 yard sale bike down Route 9, chain that slipped in 3rd gear, handlebars wrapped in electrical tape where the rubber grips had rotted off. He stopped at the gas station to put air in his front tire. The pump was free, one of the few things in Cedar Hollow that still was. That's when he saw them. 4 motorcycles parked in a crooked row by the building. 2 Harleys, an Indian Scout, a Honda Gold Wing with saddlebags hanging open and empty. The riders sat on the curb in a thin strip of shade. Duke Calloway was the biggest. 55, broad-shouldered, a silver beard covering half his chest, skin weathered by decades on the road. His vest carried patches from 3 military tours, Afghanistan twice, Iraq once, and one that read Wheels for Hope, a charity he'd built from nothing 6 years earlier. No grants, no sponsors, just Duke organizing rides and driving supplies to shelters himself, paying for gas out of his own pension. Last year, Wheels for Hope had delivered $11,000 to shelters in 9 states. Ray Bennett, 48, a former shop teacher from Virginia who'd found the road after losing everything else, sat sunburned and silent. Sal Whitmore, 42, co-owner of a small construction company, sat cross-legged staring at his dead phone. And Tommy Brooks, the youngest at 30, sat apart, back against a trash can, knees pulled to his chest, his hands shaking with a fine, constant tremor. Tommy was type 1 diabetic. His insulin kit was in the saddlebag that had bounced off Ray's bike on a pothole somewhere on the highway, the same bag that held their wallets, cash, cards, and 2 days' worth of food. They'd been riding from Atlanta to a children's shelter in Cedar Falls, 14 hours since their last meal, 6 hours since Tommy's last glucose check. Duke had already tried the gas station clerk twice. "I need food for my guys. I'll send payment tonight. Venmo, Cash App, whatever you want." The clerk, a thin man named Phil, looked at Duke's leather and patches and said, "No, store policy." Duke tried once more, explained the diabetes, explained the charity. Phil picked up the phone and said he was calling the police. So Duke sat on the curb and waited. The support van was 6 hours behind. Ray had stopped speaking. Sal's phone was dead. Tommy's tremors kept widening. Liam stood at the air pump, pretending to check his tire pressure, having heard the whole exchange through the open door. He looked at the four men. He looked at his backpack. In the front pocket, folded and sealed with masking tape, was a $20 bill, his mother's emergency money with a note in blue ballpoint. Only if you really need it. He'd carried it 6 weeks, through midterms, through a week of nothing but ramen, through the night his shoe split and he glued it shut, through every moment that felt like a really needed moment but wasn't quite, because Liam had learned to tell the difference between hard and impossible. He was saving that 20 for impossible. He looked at Tommy Brooks shaking on the curb in 90-degree heat. This was impossible. Liam unzipped the pocket, peeled the tape, unfolded the bill, read his mother's handwriting one more time, then he walked inside. He pulled 4 bottles of water from the cold case, $2 each, and 4 packs of peanut butter crackers, $1.50 each, $14, almost a full day's pay at Quick Mart. He set them on the counter. Phil rang it up. $14.18 with tax. Liam put down the 20, the tape still stuck to one corner, his mother's handwriting facing up. Phil made change, $5.82, and dropped the coins on the counter instead of into Liam's hand, the way he always did. Liam carried the bottles and crackers outside and set them on the concrete in front of the 4 men. "Here," he said. "It's not much." Tommy reached for a bottle with both shaking hands and drank half of it in one pull, eyes closed, a sound of pure relief escaping him. Ray ate a cracker pack in 3 bites. No words, just a man feeding a body that had been asking for hours. Sal broke his crackers in half, ate 1 part, and saved the rest. An old habit, the habit of someone who'd learned you don't eat everything at once. Duke ate last, watching Liam the whole time. "What's your name?" "Liam. Liam Foster." "Duke Calloway." They shook hands. Duke's palm rough and warm, twice the size of Liam's. "You go to school around here?" "Cedar County Community College. Mechanical engineering." Duke looked at the bike, the electrical tape, the broken zipper held with a safety pin, the glued shoe. "That 20, he said quietly. "That was your money?" "My mom's emergency money." Duke was quiet a moment. "I've ridden 42,000 miles for charity in 6 years, met a lot of good people, a lot who say they care, but I have never seen someone give away the thing they can't afford to lose." Liam shrugged, said the thing his mother always said. "There's plenty." Duke looked at him a long time. "No, there isn't," he said, "and that's exactly why it matters." Tommy had stopped shaking, color back in his face. "Thank you, man. Seriously." "You're welcome." Liam swung onto his bike and pedaled toward Maple Street, $5.82 in his pocket, 11 minutes late for his shift. He didn't look back. Duke pulled out his phone, 3% battery, and typed 2 words before the screen went dark. Maple Street. The support van arrived that night at 11. Tommy's blood sugar had stabilized. Duke hadn't said much since Liam left, thinking about a $20 bill with masking tape and a kid who rode away without looking back. "I need to find somebody," he told the driver. The next morning, Duke drove back to Cedar Hollow alone in a borrowed pickup. He found the gas station first. Phil told him what little he knew, a nurse mother, a dead father, a family behind on the house. Duke left without buying anything and found Maple Street. The house was worse than he'd imagined. Not abandoned, but lived in worse, which was somehow harder to see. The porch rail was crooked but recently scrubbed. The curtains were thin but ironed. Someone had trimmed a neat path through the overgrown yard. These were people who were trying. A yellow foreclosure notice was taped inside the front door. He knocked on the neighbor's door. Mrs. Patterson studied him cautiously, then talked for 20 minutes about Greg, the scaffold, the settlement that barely covered the funeral, about Ellen's night shifts and the morning she found her asleep in her car, too tired to walk to the door, about Liam, who mowed every lawn on the street for $10, who walked to work and back every night in the dark and refused a ride because he didn't want to be a bother, who slipped 10s and 5s into his mother's purse when she wasn't looking. Duke sat in the truck a long time. Then he called Ray, Sal, and Tommy on video. That kid from the gas station, his name is Liam Foster, 19 years old, works 2 jobs. His father's dead. His mother works nights. They're about to lose their house. Nobody spoke. He gave us his mother's emergency money, her last 20, and then he told me, there's plenty. Tommy wiped his face. What do? We ride, Duke said. He posted the story that night on the Iron Brotherhood Network, a private forum with 18,000 members across 40 states. No exaggeration, just what happened. The stranded riders, Tommy's glucose crash, the clerk who refused them, and the 19-year-old who spent his mother's last 20 on water and crackers for 4 strangers and rode away without asking for anything. He included Liam's name and street. By midnight, it had 200 comments. By morning, 4,000. By Monday, it had jumped to Facebook, Instagram, Reddit's motorcycle communities. A TikTok voiceover got 3 million views in 2 days. The comments were the same sentiment said 1,000 ways. We ride for our own. Tell me where to send money. I'll ride. A retired Marine in San Antonio started a GoFundMe titled Ride for Liam. A kid gave 4 strangers his last meal. Let's make sure he never has to again. It raised $8,000 in 12 hours, $45,000 by the following Friday. Sal took 2 weeks off to fix a house. Ray loaded his truck with lumber, nails, and white paint. Tommy, still recovering, posted a hospital bed video that hit 900,000 views. I'm alive because a 19-year-old kid spent his mom's last $20 on peanut butter crackers. He didn't know I was diabetic. He just saw someone shaking and decided to help. Riders from 14 states called Duke directly. When do we ride? Saturday, Duke said. Cedar Hollow, Maple Street, 7 a.m. He'd hoped for 50, maybe 100. He had no idea what was coming. Ellen, meanwhile, slept through all of it. Home at 7 each morning, toast standing up, then bed. Liam never mentioned the gas station. He didn't even have internet to see the story spreading. The storm was coming, and neither of them knew. Saturday, 6:48 a.m. Ellen had just pulled into the driveway after a 12-hour shift, sitting in the car for a moment because it was the only place nobody needed anything from her. She heard a low hum that grew until the coffee in her cup holder vibrated. She stepped out in her scrubs and watched the end of Maple Street fill with motorcycles, row after row, headlights catching the first light, until 1,500 riders from 14 states packed the street, the sidewalks, the grass shoulders, the empty lot next door. Liam came out barefoot in his t-shirt, holding a glass of water, speechless. Duke dismounted first and walked up the path. Morning, Liam. Told you my name was Duke Calloway. Didn't tell you what I do when somebody feeds my crew. Behind him, riders unstrapped coolers, groceries, gift cards, lumber, shingles, a new front door still wrapped in plastic. What is this? Liam asked. This is what happens when a kid shares his lunch. Ellen ran around the side of the house. Duke explained everything. The gas station, the 20, the story that had spread to 14 states. We're here to pay it back. Tommy stepped forward holding a white envelope with both hands, like something sacred. From the GoFundMe, $52,000. Ellen opened it, looked at the check, looked at her son, looked at the 1,500 strangers filling her yard and street. A town that had whispered about her family for 3 years now standing silent and waiting. She sat down on the porch steps and cried, the kind that comes from a place so deep you didn't know it was there. 3 years of night shifts, foreclosure notices, and there's plenty when there wasn't, breaking loose all at once. Liam sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, saying nothing, just holding on. Nobody rushed her. They let her feel it. Then, one by one, the riders went to work. Carpenters pulled out tool belts. Electricians checked wiring. Sal climbed the roof with a crowbar to pull up rotten shingles. Ray hung the new front door. A retired painter started on the porch rail with the first can of white. By noon, the house didn't look like the same house. Mrs. Patterson poured lemonade for strangers who called her ma'am and wiped their boots before stepping on her grass. Neighbors who'd whispered for 3 years came out with sandwiches and folding chairs. Nobody whispered anymore. A local news crew arrived that afternoon. Duke gave the interview in front of the house, paint still wet behind him. This kid had nothing, and he gave us everything he had. Not because he expected anything back, but because someone was hurting and he could help. That's the whole story. The reporter asked for Liam, who was on the roof holding shingles, soaked in sweat. "He's busy," Duke said. The clip aired that night and went viral by midnight, 12 million views within 4 days. The story jumped from local to national. A morning show wanted Liam to fly to New York. He declined. He had a thermodynamics exam Tuesday, but the ripples kept spreading. The dean of engineering at Cedar County Community College pulled Liam's file. Strong GPA, perfect attendance, financial aid maxed out and still not enough. And within days, a letter sat in his campus mailbox. A full 4-year scholarship, tuition, books, and a monthly stipend. He read it 3 times in the hallway, folded it into his pocket, and went to class. He told Ellen that night at the kitchen table. She held the letter like it was made of glass. St. Francis Hospital's head of nursing saw the news segment and pulled Ellen's file. 12 years of service, 3 commendations, 0 sick days in 18 months, then checked her billing records and found $8,200 in outstanding medical debt from the year Greg died. He wrote it off entirely, then approved the day shift transfer she'd requested 9 months earlier, and that had sat buried on his desk. Ellen found out on a Tuesday and didn't cry this time. She just asked if she could start Monday, already calculating that day shifts meant being home for dinner, packing Liam's lunchbox without a 5 a.m. alarm. The mortgage was the last piece. Of the $52,000 raised, $12,400 cleared the overdue balance in full. The remaining $39,600 went into a savings account, Ellen's first since Greg died. The yellow notice came off the door. Nobody put up a new one. A month later, Duke called and invited Liam and Ellen to his Atlanta garage, a converted warehouse usually full of motor oil and wrenches, transformed for the night with string lights and folding chairs. 200 riders filled the room. Sal grinned by the door. Ray wore a clean flannel for the first time Liam had ever seen. Tommy, healthy now, laughed with a rider from another chapter. Ellen sat in a new blue dress, her first purchase for herself in 2 years, smoothing the fabric over her knees. Duke stood at the front with something draped over his arm and told the story one more time, start to finish. The stranded ride, the lost saddlebag, Phil's refusal, Tommy shaking on the curb, and the kid who peeled open his mother's tape 20 for 4 strangers he'd never met. "I've been riding 30 years, 40,000 miles on charity runs. I've met a lot of generous people, but I've never met anyone who gave away the thing they couldn't afford to lose and then looked me in the eye and said, 'There's plenty.'" He unfolded a black leather vest. On the back, the Wheels for Hope patch. On the front, stitched in gold, Liam Lunchbox Foster. The room erupted. Whistles, stomping boots, 200 people clapping in a metal building where the sound bounced like thunder. "This makes you one of us," Duke said. "Not because you ride, you don't even have a motorcycle." Laughter rippled through the room. "But because brotherhood isn't about the bike, it's about what you carry in here." He tapped his chest. Liam pulled on the vest, hands shaking now for a different reason. Too large in the shoulders, and he didn't care. "My dad used to tell me something," he said, voice cracking. "He said the smallest thing you do might be the biggest thing in someone else's day. I didn't really understand that when I was a kid." He looked around the room. "I just shared my lunch." Ellen cried again, quietly this time, and squeezed the hand of a stranger beside her, who squeezed back without hesitation. Duke handed over one more folded paper, news of the Greg Foster Memorial Fund for Children of Construction Workers, its first scholarship starting that fall. Liam read his father's name in print and folded it carefully into the vest pocket, right over his heart. Outside, 200 engines fired up in sequence, a rolling wave of thunder that rattled the workbenches. Not going anywhere, just brotherhood saying welcome. Liam is 20 now. Sophomore year, Dean's List, still studying mechanical engineering. His backpack has a working zipper. His shoes are new. His bike got real handlebar grips, though he kept the electrical tape on the left side because Duke told him not to forget where he started. He hasn't. Every morning, Ellen still packs a lunchbox. She doesn't need the 5 a.m. alarm anymore, just old habit. Rice, chicken, greens, sometimes a note folded under the lid, or just a small heart drawn in blue ballpoint. Liam eats on the same bench outside the engineering building, but he doesn't eat slowly anymore. On Saturdays, he rides to the gas station on Route 9. Phil doesn't work there anymore. Liam parks by the air pump and leaves a brown paper bag on the bench by the door. Sandwich, water, crackers, no note, no name. He's done it every Saturday for a year. He doesn't check if anyone takes them. The Foster house looks different now. White paint, a straight porch rail, a new roof, and a mailbox that finally reads, Foster, in full, all 6 letters. There's a garden in the side yard, tomatoes, basil, sunflowers taller than the fence. On the mantel beside Greg's photo sits a framed picture of Liam in a leather vest, still too big in the shoulders, surrounded by 200 bikers, grinning like he'd just been handed the world. Maybe he had. A $3 lunchbox, 4 strangers, 1,500 motorcycles, and a kid who proved that the smallest thing you do might be the biggest thing in someone else's life.